My position has always been we all have to agree that election fraud is not 0%. It's not zero. And everyone agrees to that. Do you think there's any election fraud at all? Yeah, probably. At some level, there's probably some campaign workers that have a vested interest in one party or another. Like a lot of these people that are working in these election offices are very biased, right? They're very politically active, and they're probably not agnostic in their political beliefs. They're probably pretty steadfast in that this is, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, that this is the guy that I want. And if there is a way where you know you're getting some votes from a particular county that might be blue or a particular county that might be red, and you can fuck around and you're some person who really believes you're on the right side of history.
Well, especially with like how white hot politics are now at the moment, where people who, hate Donald Trump hate him so much.
Look at this, a sampling of recent election fraud cases from across the United States. The Heritage Foundation's election fraud database presents a sampling of recent proven instances of election fraud from across the country. Each and every one of these cases in this database represents an instance in which a public official, usually a prosecutor, thought it serious enough to act upon it, and each and every one ended in finding that the individual had engaged in wrongdoing in connection with an election, hoping to affect its outcome, or that the results of an election were sufficiently in question and had to be overturned. So look at this. So it says here there's 1,438 proven instances of voter fraud, 1,240 criminal convictions, 48 civil penalties, 108 diversion program, judicial finding, official finding. Okay, so it's showing that there's at least, it's not zero.
Right, and that, you could argue, in a country as big as ours, wouldn't even be that bad if that's all there was. But those are just the proven cases.
Right.
So then you're left to wonder
how many people got away with it.
Right, how many go unproven.
Yeah.
And we don't know exactly what that answer is. But my thing is more like, I think if you zoom out and you just say, okay, what was the year that was 2020? Well, okay, coming into 2020, Donald Trump is the president. He's presiding over what is he would describe as a white hot economy, where there was very low unemployment. There were certain tangible things he could point to and say, "Look, this has really worked out for the economy." And
Can
we're
I
doing
pause
very
you
well.
right there?
Sure.
Is that because of the policies of the Obama administration about they were coming to fruition, or is it because of direct changes that he made?
So I would say a mix of both. But I would argue that it was kind of a bubble economy still. And that it was still propped up off very low interest rates and very high government spending, and that you can make things look good on charts when things are like that. But I would argue that he hadn't really fixed like the major underlying problems in the economy. But he did have some pretty significant deregulation in the energy sector. He did pass some very significant corporate tax cuts, and I think those things were very good for business. So kind of a mix of both. But that's the starting point of 2020. Donald Trump bragging, he brag about the lowest African-American unemployment and the lowest Latino unemployment and how great the economy was and how he's doing all these great things. He was poised to have an excellent shot at being reelected. And then you have the economy destroyed by government imposition. Like, even if you think the lockdowns were the right things to do, the fact is that through state governors decided we're tanking our economy, like we're closing down our economy. And then you had a summer full of the biggest riots of my lifetime, which were sponsored not only financially, where you had big, powerful groups paying bail for rioters to get out of jail, but also just completely backed by the entire corporate press. This is the voice of the unheard, fiery but mostly peaceful, just making every excuse for these rioters going on in almost every major city across the country. During this whole time, anybody who wanted to speak out against this was often censored for doing so. If you wanted to speak out against the lockdowns or against Black Lives Matter or any of this stuff, you might lose social media, you might lose your job. A bigger censorship campaign than we've really ever had before. This is all going on that year. And then they announce that we are overhauling the way we do elections. And for the first time, we're letting everyone vote by mail. Not just the absentee ballots for like military personnel, but everyone can just vote by mail now. A way that we were never okay with doing it before because we would have been very concerned about fraud. But now we're all going to do that. So in this like revolutionary year, we're overhauling how we do everything. And then you have the thing with the Hunter Biden laptop story being censored. And then the result is that Joe Biden wins the election. Given all of those factors, there's just no conceivable way that an overwhelming majority of Trump voters weren't going to feel like this thing was stolen.
Right.
Just look at all the like fundamentals of what happened that year. And even if you really, really don't like Donald Trump, how could you look at all those fundamentals and not go, okay, yeah, I see where. I'd see where with all of that, that was fertile soil for belief that this thing was stolen from them.
Yeah.
You know? It was a pretty crazy thing. And the problem, and I think we're past the point of no return on this, for better or for worse, is that even if you think Donald Trump committed all of these crimes and that it's right for them to bring down all these indictments, at least acknowledge that it's kind of over for the right half of America to ever believe in this process again. Because the way they're going to look at this is like, oh, look, you wouldn't give him a fair shot again. Like, once again, you wouldn't just let him have a fair shot. You wouldn't just let the American people vote, which is so, if you believed in democracy, if you believe in this country, if you believe in trying to unite us in any way, wouldn't it be so obvious at this point? Like, it's not as if every one of the charges Donald Trump is being faced with is like some novel legal theory where they're twisting a statute to try to make him guilty of this crime. It's a very gray area at best. Wouldn't you just go, look, we're going to have a national referendum on this in November. Let the American people decide. Which side you know what I mean? Which side are they on of this? And then we could give this democracy thing a shot and see who wins. Mm-hmm. But if you do it like this, then basically the entire right half of America now doesn't believe this game is real anymore. They don't really believe they're in a democracy where they get to pick who they want to vote for. Because they're like, no, we picked this guy and you screwed him out of it. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Maybe it's better that they don't believe in this system anymore. Because the system is bullshit. So,
Richmond, north of Richmond.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't want total control. Great song.
It's a great song.